It's wonderful for you to be here today, and I'd like to immediately introduce the governor of our great state of Utah, the Honorable Gary Herbert.
Well, thank you, Sterling, and thank you for the good weather. And we appreciate you arranging for us to have a great time to get together here. And we certainly welcome one and all to the rotunda of the Utah State Capitol building. One of the most beautiful buildings, in fact, in our state and really throughout the country. It's a great opportunity to have this as a venue to honor our Vietnam veterans here today. I appreciate the great prayer that was given by our chaplain as he talked in terms of we're here to celebrate liberty and correct principles, and also in remembrance of those who have fought so valiantly for liberty and correct principles in very difficult times. And I was proud last year as we gathered here in the rotunda to sign the bill commemorating March 29th as Vietnam Veterans Remembrance Day. And I appreciate the fact that we're back here together as we have some additional legislation which will help us to remember those who have served so valiantly and to honor those who have served, and also hopefully to make lives better for our veterans. And I know we can't thank you enough, and we don't, but we ought to be also doing something to help, not just a pat on the back and an attaboy and attagirl, but what can we do to actually help you and your lives in a more concrete way. And some of the legislation we have here is, again, an attempt to do that. So we thank you, we welcome you. I appreciate that we have legislators here, and I certainly want to acknowledge their work and their efforts. Our legislature really is very much in tune with the spirit of patriotic service that comes with those who wear the uniform. I know I reflect back on my own time as a staff sergeant in the Army Guard, and I have at least an appreciation for the service that you render as veterans and those who served in combat and other ways to help support our military people. I certainly recognize the sacrifice and the service of those who stayed at home, home fires burning, and to make things well at home as can be, and for those who in fact have had that have to give the ultimate sacrifice and not returning home, and the impact it has on family members too. So we thank one and all for making this day possible. We appreciate the good work of so many of you. I will just note, as we honor individuals who've served so bravely during the Vietnam War, more than 3 million Americans served in that conflict under very difficult circumstances. We all know how difficult that was for our country. The politics of it were difficult. And unfortunately, in my own editorial opinion, the politics got in the way of really being able to win and to do what probably needed to be done. And in hindsight, we think we see some of the mistakes made here in the country. More than 50,000 Vietnam veterans to live here in Utah and call Utah home. We appreciate their service, and we certainly appreciate the contributions they've continued to make with our society, with the state of Utah in their post-military service. 388 Utahns lost their life during the Vietnam War, and 14 are still listed as missing in action. One thing that we should have learned, and I think we have learned, is that in spite of the difficulty of war and the disputes made over whether we should engage or not engage and how we should engage and to what extent we should engage, is that we should always thank the veteran for their service. They don't really ask why, they just do. And Commander-in-Chief, the President, and our Congress, as they declare war and serve very patriotically with great courage and commitment in behalf of the American people. Again, harkening back to our prayer in the fight for liberty and correct principles, good values that we here appreciate in Utah and in this great country. So we thank one and all. We have 3 bills that we're going to have introduced to us here. I'll just mention them and ask the sponsors to come forward and maybe explain what the bills are. The first one is concurrent resolution, SCR 6, supporting Vietnam veterans. This is really a resolution of us renewing our commitment of saying thanks to the military personnel who served and sacrificed during the Vietnam War. And we're going to encourage all people to take time to recognize and support our veterans. The second bill is House Bill 275, Highway Designation Amendments. This modifies the designation of our State Highway Act, particularly I-84, which is out in the northern and central part of our state, goes up into Idaho. And we'll have Representative Justin Fossen, who's in his military uniform here today with us, having served in the military himself, to speak that issue. We'll have Senator Bramble speak to the first one on the concurrent resolution. And again, this designation, again, is not, in my own view, does not replace our need to say thanks, and it probably doesn't make up for the lack of gratitude that we've shown. But it does give us an opportunity to honor specifically the Vietnam veterans who fought in Vietnam. And last but not least is Senate Bill 214, Veterans, sponsored by Senator Pete Knudsen. And we'll have Senator Knudsen speak about the Veterans Court. Again, we have some of our district courts already using Veterans Courts. And certainly around the country, we have more and more Veterans Courts designed to help for nonviolent offenses, to help the veterans, some of them suffering from PTSD and other ailments, to help them get their lives back together and give a helping hand, and not just a heavy hand of punishment. And so our Veterans Court is designed to help us to continue to listen to our veterans and their needs and respond to them. So with that, let's bring up first Senator Bramble, SCR 6, co-sponsor Val Peterson. Then after that, House Bill 275, Representative Justin Fossen, co-sponsored by Senator Knudsen. And last but not least, our Veterans Court, Senator Pete Knudsen, co-sponsored by Representative Paul Ray, in that order.
Thank you, Governor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a humbling experience to be up here today, because the true heroes are the veterans that we're here to honor. As a young man, a sophomore in high school in Chicago in 1968, I experienced the turmoil that this country was facing firsthand. There was a national political convention, the Democrat National Convention. There were protests, there were riots. 1969, 1970. Those of us that are Vietnam era remember all of that all too well. I was so impacted by those demonstrations that when I went to Notre Dame, I signed on as a midshipman in the Navy ROTC program. This resolution that we passed in the Utah legislature, a concurrent resolution that requires the support of the House, the Senate, and the signature of the governor, recognizes the challenges that Vietnam veterans experienced. Let me read a portion. The Vietnam War was an extremely divisive issue in a conflict that caused a generation of veterans to wait too long for the American public to acknowledge and honor their efforts and services. Whereas unfortunately expressions of bitterness, anger, and hatred regarding the United States' involvement in a war were aimed not only at those whose decisions placed the United States in the conflict, but also at those who heeded the call to serve their country in the armed forces. It goes on to talk about the challenges, but I'd like to read what the resolution says. Whereas a commemorative gift will be presented to each Vietnam veteran in every state, will be produced on behalf of a nonprofit coalition. I was approached by a group, a national group, that said, look, we can pass a resolution, but why don't we provide something to the roughly 47,000 Vietnam veterans that have served and that are resident in the state of Utah. So with this resolution and the appropriation that accompanied it, we will be presenting, after it's produced, a very high quality color book honoring Vietnam veterans. There will be a video produced, and it is clear evidence of the gratitude, the appreciation, and the support that the state of Utah, as voiced through the legislature and the governor, have for the sacrifice that each of you have made, and for those families who lost loved ones who gave the ultimate sacrifice to defend this country, the sacrifice that they've made. That's what the resolution does. It's a privilege to have been the sponsor. I might note that all 104 legislators signed on as co-sponsors of this resolution as an affirmative sign of the respect that they have for the sacrifices and the commitment and the service that each of you have rendered to our state and to our great nation. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real honor and privilege that I have to stand before you today. For the past 3 years, I've served as co-chairman of the Veterans Task Force, and now we have the Veterans Commission. Representative Paul Ray and I have chosen to be the co-chairs of both the task force and the commission. And over these years, we've discovered a lot of things. Number one that we've discovered is that veterans aren't always aware that they have earned benefits. And so we are trying to make sure that we have information available through various sources. We even have places on college campuses where this information is disseminated to veterans to help them not only with medical and other type issues, but helping them become students in the various universities and colleges that we have in our state. These are wonderful people, and we feel very strongly as a legislature that we need to do all we can to show not only our respect and thanks, but to truly be something meaningful for them as they go forward with their lives. This bill that I sponsored, along with Representative Ray, Veterans Courts, is a very special type of court. There are veterans, like those who aren't, that commit felonies and crimes. Very often, though, veterans are responding to what they brought home with them from combat, and they live with it every day and every night. And so, in talking with the federal court here in Salt Lake City, I discovered for the first time that there is a court system available to these veterans if they have been found by the law enforcement to possibly be guilty of a crime. Well, by going to a veterans court that is sensitive to the work and the sacrifices that these veterans may have made and have made, that they are looked at in a very special way. It doesn't mean that we just sweep under the carpet things that have been done that are not right, but it provides a sensitive pathway for these veterans. And very often it's much like the drug courts. Well, rather than put them behind bars, we try to help them with their problems. And so I'm very honored and privileged to have been able to be the primary sponsor of this legislation. Thank you.
I'm honored to address you today about HB 275. I just want to recognize a couple of people. Commander Frank Mon with the Utah Order of the Purple Heart, who is also a member of my community, who was the individual who brought this bill to my attention, and also Senator Knudsen, who was the Senate sponsor. I'm appreciative of our legislators and their ability to recognize your sacrifice. Again, it's an honor to be here and address you today, and just to be a part of this group of veterans, to be a veteran myself. HB 275 is a small token of recognition, and I understand that. As the governor mentioned, it designates Highway 84 as the Vietnam Veteran Memorial Highway. Of course, I-15 is our Veteran Memorial Highway. I-84 is now, or will be today, our Vietnam Veteran Memorial Highway. In recognition of you, more Vietnam veterans call Utah home than we actually sent out, which is an honor, I think, for Utah. It's a privilege to have you here with us. And as really the hope of HB 275 is that as those 110,000 vehicles travel that highway every year, that they will recognize the sacrifices of our Vietnam veterans, and that we'll be able to increase their education and understanding of the sacrifices that you made. So thank you again for letting me be here today. I will say, I was moved as I presented this bill in both committees, having served myself from 1996 to 2005. My reception, my homecoming was far different than the one that our Vietnam veterans experienced. I understand that, I realize that, and that's part of the reason behind this bill. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I note, as Sergeant Fossen just mentioned to us, we have more here than we sent out, indicative of the quality of life and really the environment we have, which is very patriotic here in the state of Utah. I'm proud of that. Pleased to see the attitude we have as a state towards our military, which is one that's very positive. I do note that the last, I think, 4 commanders from Hill Air Force Base have determined they're going to retire in Utah. So for those of you who've moved to Utah, you set the trend. And a lot of people coming to Utah here that find the quality of life here and the attitude here refreshing. Let me just also acknowledge once again the legislature. We have a legislature who appreciates your service and is trying to do something to put some money where their mouth is and trying to get some things done. Recognize on the front row Representative Kurt Oda, who's been a big friend of the military. I see Kevin Stratton just came in here a little bit late in the back row. But they represent all the others that were not sponsors of the bill, but yet signed on and wanting to pay tribute to you for your service. The last point I'd like to just mention, I mentioned in my earlier remarks that there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the Vietnam War. And we've learned some hard lessons, but I think some good lessons. What also has come out of that, as you all recall, is a movement that said, in essence, if you're old enough to fight and die for your country, you ought to be old enough to vote for those who send you into harm's way. You folks and many others like-minded had that message, which actually changed the Constitution. In 1971 in June, because of your efforts and many like you around this country, we recognized that was a true principle. If you're old enough to fight and die for your country, you ought to be able to vote for those who send you into harm's way. And so we've done a good thing here that's lasting beyond the Vietnam War. We have still a challenge to make sure that our young people understand and appreciate the service and sacrifice of you and others that has given them that opportunity to be informed, be knowledgeable about the issues, to vote, and let their voice be heard through the ballot process. So again, something that's come out of the Vietnam War that really is not talked about too much is that significant change in our Constitution. So we again honor you today. We remember your service and your sacrifice and those of your family. And we look to the future being made brighter because you understand the importance of liberty, correct principles, and the freedom we have here in this great country that needs preserving. Thank you very much. Whoever you'd like to have up here, so. This is the photo op part. So these are not ceremonial. These are the actual bills themselves, which we're going to be signing here. And once we sign them, they'll become the law of the land. And We'll start with the concurrent resolution, SR6. Colonel, make sure we got everybody up here that needs to be up. Okay, this is concurrent resolution 6. Chief sponsor, Senator Kurt S. Bramble. House sponsor, Val Peterson. This is encouraging everybody to thank the veterans for their service and to find ways, in fact, to honor their service. Okay, that's the first part. We got two bills. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. We have 3 copies of concurrent resolution 6. All right, this is Senate Bill 214. Chief sponsor is Senator Pete Knudsen. Co-sponsor is Paul Ray. This is regarding the Veterans Court, which we already have some success here in our district courts in Utah. And also has been found to be successful in other parts of the country. We're amplifying that opportunity to, again, help our veterans. Okay, you can clap on that one now. All right, and the last one is House Bill 275. Sponsor this is Representative Sergeant Justin Fossum. Let's see. I'm using my best penmanship here for those of you who are concerned. Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Governor, and we excuse the Governor. He might have to leave a few minutes early for another appointment. but we appreciate you being here today and signing that legislation for us. We will now be privileged to hear the 23rd Army Band Quintet play the Armed Forces Salute, and you know the drill. If it's your service melody that they play, you're welcome to stand and be honored. And if you have a family member that served in one of these branches of service, we also like you to stand. So the 23rd Army Band. Governor, it's nice to know our coasts are guarded. They may be few in number, but they're strong. And I couldn't help but notice this gentleman over to the right in the wheelchair as the Air Force song was being played. He raised his hand. Raise your hand again so we can all see it right there. Yes, you. Yes. Thank you. And I think they have a new band director because he could do that too. Thank you, sir. If you ask this Marine hero what today is all about, he would say, this day focuses on honoring and respecting the service and sacrifice of all Utah Vietnam-era veterans. Nobody works harder than he does in his service as president of the State Vietnam Veterans of America. Please welcome Dennis Howland.
Thank you. You notice Sterling and I are wearing the same tie. He got the memo this morning, only two of us got it. Of course, my wife gave Christmas. I'm going to try to find out where he got his. Many of you don't know that Sterling Paulson likewise is a Vietnam veteran. Let's please give him a big hand. You know, we've talked about you, and everybody looks around and says, is he or isn't he? I'd like all Vietnam veterans and Vietnam era veterans to please stand, and if you can't stand, please raise your hand, please. Thank you for your service, and welcome home. Look around at each other and say, welcome home, guys. Thank you. And to the families of Vietnam veterans and the Gold Star families, thank you for your support. And Vietnam era veterans that tell me day after day that we're not really a Vietnam veteran because we didn't have boots on the ground, you're wrong. We didn't fight that war by ourselves by going in country. When we needed a tank, somebody sent it to us. When we needed an aircraft, somebody sent it to us. When we sent 58,000 of our young men and women home to be buried, someone
F-105 pilot friend Conrad said, hey guys, we ought to cover up. And so we dug out those long pajamas that we'd also gotten and put them on and together said the Lord's Prayer. And it was too hot to keep those pajamas on, so I was taking mine off and Connie said to me, said to us, there's something else we should do. He said we should say the pledge. And so we did. We imagined the flag, put our hands over our heart, and said the pledge. And what amazed me is when I got through is how I felt. It was like, I never experienced this before, but I felt like I was on a team and not fighting the war alone anymore. Well, that pattern continued, and finally, after 6 Christmases passed, the end came, and the camp commander opened the cells and let us all out one day, and he said, you go home tomorrow. We got, the next morning, got some real clothes, and a bus took us from the plantation out to the Chialam airport, which was a pretty shot-up field. And as we got close, the tail of a C-141 was sticking up above the trees, and on it was a flag. And one of the guys standing next to me poked me, and he said, hey, look at that flag. And I tell you, to eyes that have been accustomed to the colorless world of captivity, it was startlingly brilliant. Well, that airplane flew us out of Vietnam and away from war. And I felt a feeling of appreciation for America like I'd never felt before. Well, we were the third of 4 groups coming out of Vietnam on that first flight. We're the early guys shot down. The first guy shot down in Vietnam was Everett Alvarez. He got bumped out of first place by Jeremiah Denton, a guy who had been in solitary confinement for 4 years, who had been tortured and forced to appear in an interview in which he, in Morse code, blinked torture. And it was good. He bumped him out of line. And when we landed at Clark Air Base, when they landed at Clark Air Base in the Philippines, there was this real reception, and Denton stepped down the ramp from that C-141 and saluted the flag and the welcoming committee and shook their hand, and then turned to the microphone and said what's almost become immortal, and it well expresses the way we feel. We are honored to have had the opportunity to serve our country under difficult circumstances and in difficult times. We're eternally grateful to the President, to our country for this day. God bless America. Well, that was kind of the way it happened in this change of feeling. I'd like to just end with one more thought. A few years ago, I was at the museum at Hill Air Force Base, and I read some words that kind of brought to the surface the feelings I had when I returned to base without a wingman. It was written by Archibald MacLeish, who was the Librarian of Congress. And he had been an artillery officer in World War I, and they're having this occasion to honor the staff of the library that had died in that war. And he wrote this poem, which to me is very powerful. The young dead soldiers do not speak. Nevertheless, they are heard in the still houses. And when the clock counts, they have a silence that speaks for them. In the night, they say, "We were young. We have died. Remember us." Our deaths are not ours. They're yours. They will mean what you make of them. Whether our lives and our deaths were for peace and a new hope, or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this. We leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning. We were young, they say. We have died. Remember us. I believe that those of you here have fulfilled your responsibility in a way that's worthy of their sacrifice. Thank you and welcome home. And may God guard and guide and bless us and the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you want to see more of his story, there's a display at the Hill Air Force Base Museum in Roy of his POW experiences. And you might want to take time to visit that and learn more. Also, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War and to honor Utah veterans, the Utah Department of Veterans and Military Affairs created a commemorative coin. Some of you may have gotten this last year. They have produced certificates of appreciation for Vietnam veterans, and for those of you who did not receive a coin, please go to the table in the back of the room. They're raising their hands right there. Go back and get yours. You've earned it. After my very brief remarks and the retiring of the colors, we will carry the wreath from the rotunda and out the front doors into the west side of the Capitol building, where we will lay the wreath there at the Vietnam Memorial. So follow us out. The pipe band will lead us out, and we will follow them. Ladies and gentlemen, war is hell, but so is living without freedom. Coming home to the home of the brave and the land of the free doesn't just happen. You've heard today over 58,000 Americans died in this war. But don't forget also that 2 million Vietnamese died in this war. And we all live on this planet together. Many of our veterans are still fighting their own personal battles. So what can and should we do now? You heard what we should do today from Dennis. I'm very proud to see our veterans active in our community. I see them in so many places where they support families who need their support, and they are there to give it. I see their American flags flying at many ceremonies throughout the state, and I see their dedication to never leaving a fallen soldier alone. So my message is this: stand straight, hold your head high, be proud of your service to your country. Put your arms around the next generation. Tell them your story so they can learn how to move forward in the future, knowing what it took to bring them into the present. Sound the trumpet of strength from your own experiences, and never let the lessons learned on the battlefield fade away. I salute you all.